come in, but we've conceded 6 goals. We conceded 5 at Brighton. You know, so somewhere along the line we've got to shore things up. And when you play in a second half, as you know, we didn't come out quite, you know, straight away into the game like we had. We got a control of it, and then we seemed to get the possession back. We were looking with a chance with Daka's header. Yeah, great save, but you know, it was kamikaze the second half in a way of losing that shape. Everyone was all over the place. Individual errors, you know, the lack of discipline. You've got to look at these factors, and it shouldn't happen. And you know, as defenders, I've been in situations myself like that, and you know, what you've got to do is people in front of you who are obviously trying to retrieve the game. You've got to get them back into the shape, and sometimes just sit in, and then you know, assess it from there. But that's what happens when you are chasing a game. And you lose that discipline, because that's 6 goals. That's a good hiding in the end, where it wasn't fair really. But when you say that they deserve the 6 goals, because if you're going to defend like that, then that's what's going to happen. Although it could have been a 6-5 game. That it really could. It was an entertaining game, first half especially. It was end-to-end stuff. Like we said, it was like a cup final game. But somewhere along the line, you've got to look at this now and go, right, things are not right in certain areas, and that, you know, I've got some sympathy because of, you know, the way that we tried, the effort and commitment, the creativity we had plenty of possession and chances, and you know, I don't think Tottenham are a complete team, but when you've got the likes of Son who can come on and you know, he totally destroyed us in the end, ruthlessly, and that's the type of player he is. I'm surprised he is dropped. You know, it's unbelievable, really. But still, we've got to learn, and we've got to quickly get things right. We've got some interesting games coming up, 5 or 6 games where the favourable games. But are they favourable games now? I don't know. Forest is next up after the international break, I believe, is it? On a Monday night, and you know, we know what that battle is going to be. It's going to be unbelievable. So it's concerning, but you know, there was elements of that game where we really played to a high level and tempo, and there's certainly, you know, Wout Fast was he interests me definitely, although he's just got to be careful that he doesn't drive too far forward. He always wants to play on that front foot. You can't always do that, but I understand we've got to try and get back in the game. But if we're going to do that, and then everybody's, you know, gun-ho going forward, that's what's going to happen on the break, and it did, and they were ruthless with that Tottenham, like we know they can be.
Matty, how did you see this afternoon unfold?
I think we mentioned it at half-time. Deja vu from Brighton. Looking at away from home, Arsenal conceded 4, Brighton conceded 5. Today it's 6. You're not going to go away from home and winning by 6 or 7 to score. The positives are, yes, we look promising again.
Scored twice.
Scored twice. Those, yeah. Looking a threat in terms of the attacking department, but defensively, at the minute, the team don't look like getting a clean sheet. They're far too open from minute 1 throughout. I know at the end the game gets stretched, but far too open. It looks like a team that defensively at the minute are poor and all over the place. Not just the defensive players, but as a collective. There's individual mistakes that happens, but as a collective, it's too easy at times. You can't come away from home and it be 4s, 5s, 6s because you're unable to score. 7, Walsh was on about, yes, it could have been 6-5 in the end, but they're getting on to cricket scores. In terms of being solid, compact and grinding out a result and making it difficult to get anything from it, Leicester far too open. Yes, the plaudits and the attacking football and the way they went about the game, and there's more energy, endeavour, commitment, and the goal from Maddison was a terrific goal, but you always felt at half time there's going to be more goals in the game. It never looked like it was going to just end at 2-2, which is something that needs to be addressed. It needs to be quick, but from minute 1 it was far too open for my liking, let alone the managers and the team. It just played into Tottenham's hands in the end, unfortunately.
Yeah, which is very frustrating, Dean, because as you said, particularly in the first half, Leicester, let's say, were the better team. Obviously, weren't overall, certainly weren't in that second half. But that's the frustrating thing, that at half-time, at 2-2, we were almost disappointed that Leicester weren't ahead, really, at the break.
Definitely, like you say, Dan, the first half they were excellent, and if you actually analyse the first half of what I saw, Leicester weren't open. They pressed the ball and won the ball back so many times in Tottenham's half. Yes, they conceded from 2 set plays, which is really important, and that has to improve. You know, that's a must. Otherwise, they're going to lose games. It's going to make it very hard for themselves. But with and without the ball, they dominated Tottenham. They really did. They were the better team. They created chances, had lots of energy, lots of quality. So defensively in the first half, except for the set pieces, they were very good. Tottenham didn't really have a strike on goal, except, again, from a set piece, Danny Ward's save where he tips onto the bar. But then the second half, they were a little bit open because they chased the game. But you look at the goals. Son's goal is a spectacular goal, the first one. But that comes again from James Justin giving the ball away. The third goal comes from Ndidi just being a little bit cold and unaware that he needs to play it first time and tries to take 2 touches. So it's all avoidable. I didn't really think Leicester, except for the last 15 minutes, got cut open at all, really. It was just through individual mistakes, which at this level you can't do. But the attacking play was very, very good. But I agree with Walshy and Matt what they're saying. It can't continue. You know, 6 goals is too much, but it wasn't like that, really, from where I saw it, watching it live. Tottenham didn't dictate the game. They didn't really cut Leicester open. There was some excellent goals from them and just individual errors from Leicester.
That's the frustrating thing, I think, Dean, particularly the third goal that went in, as you said, the mistake from Wilfred Ndidi. I'm sure what Brendan Rodgers said at half-time was, let's at least keep it tight for 5-10 minutes at the start of this second half. Let's continue on the front foot as we were. And then for that to happen was a real sucker punch.
It was, and you'd have to give credit to Tottenham. They started the second half a lot better, more aggressive, which you would have expected, which would be the disappointment from Brendan, because I'm sure he mentioned that at half-time, and Leicester came out a little bit cold, maybe a little bit overconfident, because they had played so well in that first half and dominated possession, and Ndidi again made some brilliant interceptions during the game and actually had a decent performance, but in that moment he just wasn't aware, and giving goals away like that, but after you've worked so hard to get back into the game at 2-2 and almost could have gone in at half-time up with the chance from James Maddison to make it 3-2, that would be the disappointment, because from being in control again, you're chasing the game and you have to kind of change your tactics and try and get back into the game, which they almost did with the header from Patson Daka. Brilliant move again, brilliant pass from James Maddison, I thought was very good today. But yeah, you can't continue to make those errors, unfortunately, at this level, because you just will get punished.
Which they were, and maybe the hope in that particular instance, that particular moment, was that it fell to Bentancur, one of the defensive midfielders, but it was a fantastic finish, in fairness to him, but it really wasn't the start to the second half that Leicester needed.
It wasn't. You could see, you know, and you just willing him just to move the ball quicker. He was far too slow. 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds it must have been that he's not been aware that he's going to be closed down in a position like that. It happened against Brighton. I think it was Maddison or someone, and we're chasing.
Yeah.
You know, it's happening a lot. So you know, this somewhere, you know, it really. When I said at half time, I hope that we've got the energy levels to sustain like we did the first half, but clearly we didn't. We run out of steam. It certainly looks like that now, but you know, it was a terrific first half. Like I said, there's so much good things and tempo and everything. You were, you know, winning the ball back, chasing people down. But the second half, where was it? You know, footballers play for 90 minutes, and you know, you've got to sometimes save some energy. And maybe Tottenham did that. They just sat back, soaked it up a little bit, and they had more energy levels in that second half, and made a few changes that completely took the game in Tottenham's favour. But it's annoying now because there's such a lot of individual errors and mistakes that are happening, and it's being costly. You know, it's all right to sat here and saying, look, you know, we were unlucky, we did this, we did that, but at the end of the day, it's 6 goals, and you know, it hurts me to see us in this position. It really does. But we were talking about how, you know, sometimes you've got to go away and grind a 0-0 or a 1-0 win away from home. Sometimes backs against the wall, 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1 like we used to do. You know, we'd sit there with 2 banks of 4, and it's hard to break down. But when you're gun ho and you're doing, you know, you're playing how we did, then that happens.
But you touch on that, and from minute 1 we're open. I hear the points that Dean's making, and I'm sure at the stadium and live, Leicester on the front foot, but the onus isn't on Leicester to play. It's Tottenham, they're the home team. We never looked solid, and you could say the goals first half were cheap goals, and Tottenham never really did anything to create or make things happen. They were cheap goals.
But I think we dominated 30 minutes of that first half.
In terms of controlled possession,
yeah.
But I was never sat there watching the game thinking, oh, this is solid. We'll probably get a goal, but everything looks comfortable. That never felt the way, and when you're down at the bottom, you've got to be harder to beat in terms of defensively. Like you say, 2 banks of 4, or you get a midfield 5 sat in there, everything's solid, make it really difficult, and then play on the break, and you might nick a 1-0. It's applauded in terms of the attacking play, but at the same time, defense, we don't look like we're going to keep a clean sheet, which is a massive problem. And you can say all the attacking play, which is great, but you're not going to go to Tottenham, Arsenal, Chelsea, whoever, and go and get 5 or 6, which is a problem. It's really disappointing, and in the end it becomes harsh because the game's so open, but you don't feel at the minute Leicester are secure defensively.
Clutch at straws maybe, and look at the positives, but I guess when you're down at the bottom, which Leicester clearly are now after 7 games, is it, you probably look at the fact that they are scoring goals, they are creating chances, they just need to sort it out defensively, whereas the other way around, that's when you'd worry more, maybe?
I think there's got to be a balance, more so, and from my perspective and probably the team's perspective, I could understand it more at home, where you're on the front foot, you go and attack teams, and then you might be a little bit open, which we found out against United was sort of got caught on the counter. Against Tottenham, there's patience and you wait for your opportunities, I think, and similar to the Brighton game, we got too stretched at times. I know there's individual mistakes, but as a whole, it doesn't look too difficult to break us down, and certain areas, especially set plays, again, wasn't good enough today, but so far this season that hasn't been too much of an issue. But defensively, it's at times the opposition are cutting through us. It needs to be more difficult, more ugly to play against. That horrible side of the game,
Matt, and I could see it in that second half, is when you've got players as a defender, centre back, running at you at pace, then you've got a major problem, and it was a constant flow of traffic, you know, and it was dangerous, too dangerous to, you know, sometimes your centre back's got to say, right, you 2 midfielders, just stop going forward, sit right in front of us, and at least shore this up, because it's going to get worse, you know, and that's what's happened, because we've been, you know, trying to retrieve the game. You've almost kind of, you know, left yourselves wide open like a boxer on the ropes, really, and it's a shame, because they played better than they have done, and if they play, obviously if they play like that, they're going to get beat. But I'm saying, if you can take the plus points from that first half and how they moved the ball quickly, they created stuff, but if they're solid and they've got the discipline in front of the back 4, then that shouldn't happen, and I think they'll get that right for like I said, we've got some favourable games coming up, and there's points available. Just hope that that we can sort this out and understand where we're going wrong.
But then at the same time, that's the naivety and the organisation, which does need addressing. Unfortunately, it's got to be, because again, it's too easy. The amount of goals conceded away, you're not going to go and score 5 or 6. And you are going to get punished at times. That happens against top class opposition. It does, but some of it is too easy, unfortunately.
Dean and I have just been listening for the last 5 minutes or so to these two, which is fine. It's an interesting discussion. But Dean, obviously, Walshy mentioned it himself there, that there's particularly two, but really a run of fixtures coming up that are massive now for Leicester. The next 2 in particular, Forest at home, Bournemouth away.
Yeah, huge, Dan. And what can you do? You know, after defeat, you've got to look at it and say, okay, what did we do well? You've got to learn as well and see what mistakes you've made. But Forest is a huge game, a huge game, but a brilliant game to come back into, because you can turn things around really quickly in terms of a result, in terms of what the atmosphere will be at the training ground, within the group, and with the fans as well, and the atmosphere at the club. So I see that as a real opportunity, a difficult game, really difficult game. And then you go away to Bournemouth, and again, they kind of turned things around a little bit. I think they got a draw at Newcastle today. Gary O'Neill's in charge there, so he's obviously getting something a little bit more out of the players, but a winnable game for Leicester. So from my opinion, what I've seen today, it's the individual errors that's causing the problems. The individual errors in terms of defending set pieces. They're individual errors. Your man scores your goal, you need to stay with him. Ndidi giving the ball away, James Justin giving the ball away. That's where Leicester got stretched today for me. It wasn't positional, it wasn't players being in the wrong place, it was a turnover possession when they're in attacking position, and then they're stretched. Tottenham never really broke through them when Leicester was set. So it was more if they can be a little bit better in possession of the ball, which is one of Leicester's strengths, and I think is one of Brendan Rodgers' disappointment. That's where they're causing their own problems. If they can be better in possession, especially in their own half when they're trying to bounce it around the back and into midfield out to the fullbacks, if they can be a little bit better with that, I think those individual errors can improve. So they will need to against Forest, because there's pressure on that game, and they will think they can win that game. But yeah, good fixtures for Leicester to bounce back from, and obviously with the international break now, a bit of a rest, chance to look at things, chance to pause and consider things and see where they can improve.
As a manager, Dean, how would you cut out those individual errors? How do you stop that happening? Because sometimes it just does happen, and you can't legislate for, unfortunately, the ball being given away straight after the kick-off to the second half and the opposition scoring from it.
It's individual, Dan. I mean, that comes down to the coaches, the man management. You've got to try and reinforce that confidence within the player, because that's the way Brendan wants this team to play. He wants the centre half to play the ball into the midfield players. The midfield players are all comfortable at receiving the ball, so he's never going to go away from that. He's not going to change his philosophy. So it's working with the individual players and reinforcing that, and keeping the confidence with him to continue to do it, because at times today they did do it. The goal for James Maddison all comes from Danny Ward almost making a mistake and actually gets out of it, and Leicester actually create a brilliant goal by keeping possession and playing out from the back. So that's how Leicester score goals, and that's how they are dangerous. So it's never going to change. So as a manager, even when you're having defeats, and even when it is frustrating and players maybe continue to make their mistakes, if that's the way you're going to play and that's your philosophy, you've got to keep the confidence in playing and keep encouraging them to doing it, because that's what you're telling them to do, and that has to continue for Leicester.
It'll be vital, Walshy, won't it, this international break now, for a bit of time and just to almost reconsider and regroup. Going into that run of games. It's
almost too long this time, this time. He's probably working against us a little bit, but whatever, you can say what you want. You've got to, we have to learn. Like Dean said, we've got to learn by our mistakes. Try and cut out the passes sometimes into areas where that that someone's marked, or that someone could dispossess him in an area. Okay, if you've got Man City and all these top teams who can play in any area on their own goal line, but some teams, and you can't always do that. And this is the new modern era football, where it goes into someone, even if they're really marked, pass it back, you'll move it round, because if we go long, we just give the ball away to good teams, and you won't get it back again. So this, I can see the reasons why, and you've got to be able to play at this level to be able to take it first touch. But we're being caught in possession a few times. The corner situation is a problem, although one of them was a fantastic delivery, and Dyer's run was just too good, really. You've got to say sometimes and hold your hand up and say that was a good move and a great delivery into the box. But it's becoming a bad habit for us at the minute, and every time the ball goes out of play, there's a nervousness in the crowd about what's going to happen, and it's almost like, oh God, there's a corner, we're going to concede. you know, and that's not a great feeling to have as a manager. To be sat there, you know, I bet we're saying, look, try and keep the ball and just get a throw in rather than a corner. But unless we start attacking the ball in areas, I think this Fast can, you know, he looks a strong player, a bit more physical that we need in the team, because there's certainly a lack of physicality. But if you're going to be playing in areas, you're running a risk of what's happened today, dispossessed, and you know, and then you're attacked and you're on the back foot. How many times I can see midfielders chasing, you know, and the ball's in front of them, so he's not good enough. So that has to, you know, it has to stop, and we have to maybe just like go, right, let's just see it solid, you know, banks of however we play, and then, you know, especially when you like Matt said, you go to places like Tottenham and you've got to score 5-6 goals. It's just crazy. It's madness. And although it's a little bit unfair, the score, I don't think we deserved it quite to be 6. But they were ruthless with Tottenham in the end. And Son, you know, came on and he was the destructor in the end. But like I say, when we can, it's laughable. 6-5 it could have been, and it was a crazy game today, an absolute crazy game, end to end, exciting the first half, and then you know, we just doom and gloom the second half.
Yeah, well, that's the feeling certainly here. Well, thanks anyway to Wall Street, to Steve Walsh, to Matty Fried, and to Dean Hammond down in London for us this evening. Unfortunately, it has ended again in defeat for Leicester City, in a really disappointing 6-2 defeat there to Tottenham. We'll be back in a couple of weeks, of course, for that huge game with Nottingham Forest here on that Monday evening. So join us for that. We'll be live from 7 p.m. with Matchday Live. Good night.